All right, so what's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in to Brothers of Merit, our study series, episode 2. This time we're going to talk about fear. And Taylor, I think you and I can both count on fear, because fear was one of the first things that I encountered when starting this podcast and when we were like, hey, let's do this thing. Because as I mentioned here in the season 1, in that first episode, I was afraid deep down what people would think of me because I wanted to do this podcast. I had found my faith a few years prior to that, and I got to this point where I just, I really wanted to do a ministry. I wanted to do a podcast. I wanted to be that person that people could use as an example in a way of, hey, don't be afraid, do it because God's telling you to do it. Don't worry about what others may think. And that's where I got into, episode 2, our podcast, season 1, which was disregarding the doubters, disregarding your fear. You know what I mean? Like, I was afraid of what people would think, but I overcame it through God, and I overcame it through my brothers, through Taylor, just supporting me every step of the way, saying, dude, don't worry about what people think. I'm here for you. God's here for you, and so on.
Right, and I think that it's awesome in 2 respects. One, fear is so relatable. When we talked about that in episode 16 when we interviewed our friend Adam Kutlick, and we talked about self-doubt, we talked about Moses, and we'll get into that later, even in this clip here. But I think it's so cool that you started with that.
Right.
Because now, here we are almost a year later, and you can see, like, you know what, but I took that fear, and I was naturally scared.
Oh yeah.
But I let God overcome that. Like it says in 2 Timothy, like God hasn't given us a spirit of fear.
Right.
And so I'm gonna let God work through me instead, and I'm gonna overcome that fear. I'm gonna overcome that feeling that my masculinity may be in check here, and I'm gonna do this anyway because I really feel like God's calling me to do this. And so I love that. That's kind of like, I mean, again, it was woven throughout the whole season, but I love that that's why one of the topics that we chose was fear.
Right, and I gotta tell you guys, it wasn't easy. It was, Taylor always says that how intentional I was about it, because I did show up to a fire like we're having now with the guys, and I said, you know what, are there any podcasts out there that talk about brotherhood? I know they're out there about masculinity and being a better man, but what about us joining together as a group? Like, let's focus on that. And everyone was like, no, there isn't. So I think 2 weeks later, I came back to the group and I was like, hey, by the way, I started a podcast. So it's called Brothers of Merit. And Taylor, the entire time was like, do it, man. Like, and it's because of that brotherhood aspect as to why we're sitting here now a year later. I would have never done this if it hadn't been for the support that I had from that brotherhood. And that's why we teach people, like, don't worry about the fear, worry about the brotherhood, worry about that relationship. The fear will come and it will go as long as you trust in Jesus and you trust in the relationship that you've built with all the men you're surrounding yourself with.
Right, but fear is such a real thing, right?
And it's relatable to everyone.
Right, and that's what we talked, we talked about in episode 16 with Adam Kutlick when he went over and really he just kind of dissected Exodus 3 when he talked about Moses, and Moses had the burning bush. It's cool that we have a fire in front of us here with that. Talking about how God was like, Moses, I want you to go lead the people out of Egypt, right? And Moses was like, but what if they don't believe me? I'm not really good at speaking. There's so many reasons that we can come up with on our own, that Satan comes up with, that he tempts us with, and he says, you know what, I don't think you should do that. Fear's a real thing, and unfortunately, it's something that we don't talk about enough as men, because it's something that requires a lot of vulnerability. Stay tuned. It's something that we really want to hide, but I think one of the reasons why we wanted this to be one of the topics that we talked about is because this is something that is so relatable, it's something that's so real, and fear, and it could be anything from starting something like this, or even just having a conversation at work about Jesus.
Right.
Or it could be, I don't know if I really want to pray with my wife tonight. Like, what is she gonna think? Like, I haven't done enough to make her really think that I should do that. You know what I mean? Like, it's really, I don't know. And so I think it's really cool that we're talking about this topic.
Right. So one of the episodes that comes to mind is actually, I think it's 31, which is with Stephen Kelly, who's a professional lacrosse player. Yeah. He's from our area. His father, I believe, was extremely important in starting the FCA in this area for lacrosse. But Stephen Kelly, he came to the professional lacrosse world, and obviously was a strong man in his faith, but he was unsure if he wanted to actually reach out to other members of his team to do a Bible study before games and things. And he just basically prayed about it. And he said, God, if this is meant to be, if these other men are here to actually like worship you with me, then let's see. So he went out, he addressed his team, checked with his coach, made sure it was cool, and he addressed the team. And then lo and behold, there's 9 or 10 men that are meeting before games and in hotel rooms doing a Bible study before games and just digging deeper into their faith together. And that's a hard arena to do so in. I can kind of be related to because the fire service and being in the Army and now Air Force, and it's a big brotherhood, but that's a hard arena to do that because you're dealing with men from different walks of life. You know what I mean? They're not all from where you're from. They don't know you as well as you know yourself or your friends back home do. So you're reaching out to these quote unquote strangers in a way. They may be your teammates, but you're meeting them for the first time this season, and you're saying, hey, I trust God. Can I trust you? Let's do this together. And that's what I think one of the biggest ones that came to my mind, because that was an awesome interview with him because of just how intentional he was about building that relationship with God and his team as one.
And I think the cool part about that was, like he said, like, hey, I was scared.
Right.
Like, what's my coach gonna think about me? What are my teammates gonna think? Like, we're out here trying to even start this league and we're starting this team, and I wanna just talk about Jesus and have like an FCA group. Like what? And he talked about how like that fear was very real.
Oh yeah.
But, and that's why we wanted to talk about fear, because like fear, yeah, it's relatable, sure, but God has not given us a spirit of fear. Like it says in 2 Timothy 1:7, it says, for God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of love, and of self-discipline. So he did not give us a spirit of fear. Like God gave us a spirit of power,
right?
Like of self-discipline, of love, of things that are greater than that fear. So like that fear, yeah, it's relatable. Yeah, I understand that. But like we can see in multiple Old Testament, like if you read through the Old Testament, at the end of this, we're gonna list out lots of things that you can read in Exodus and Daniel and Esther and Judges, lots of stories of people who it's relatable to fear. It's relatable to be scared about what the result's gonna be. But when you give it over to God, he hasn't given us a spirit of fear. Like that comes from Satan.
Absolutely, and I was just going to say that. That's all Satan's doing. That's all it is, man.
Yeah.
So closing us out here, so we'll let the guys know, as in if you watched the episode 1, now we're going to put up the still shot to let you guys know where to find this curriculum and all this information that we're talking about. So we'll have the podcast episodes, we'll have the blogs, we'll have the books that the authors have written that we've interviewed, we'll have those, we'll have Bible scriptures that Taylor just listed to you that we've read through, that we've studied together, and we've dug deep into, which has helped us. So I can't harp enough to you guys that fear is from Satan, and that's all it is. And that he didn't wire us to be fearful of anything. What is there to be fearful when we serve a mighty God? There's nothing to be fearful of. So we'll leave with that. If you guys need to reach out to us for anything, just trying to figure out where do I even start, or you have questions about scripture or anything, give us a shout. Go to brothersameric.com, find our contact information, and reach out to us. We'll gladly help you because we need help just as much as everyone else does. So we're working on it together. So we'll leave you with our 3 ethos that we have here at Brothers of Merit, and that's to be vulnerable, be dedicated, and be strong. So thanks for tuning in to episode 2, and we'll see you on number 3.